get ready to fight from within. You're about to go behind enemy lines on WNJC.
Roger, 3-2. Goliath copies all. Go ahead. Target is surrounded by multiple firms entering what appears to be a residential area. Requesting permission to engage. Over.
From the People's Republic of New York City, you're now going behind enemy lines with Gene Baradelli and Russ Gallo.
And you're now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, America? Gene Baradelli here with you on another lovely evening here in the People's Republic of New York City. Glad you could be with us. Time to caucus in Nevada. Yes, there are some candidates rolling the dice tonight as we speak. Some people are going to have a good hand. Some people are going to have probably, as they call it, the nuts, which is be the best hand. Some are going to have the worst hand. We shall see. Let the chips fall where they may. Nevada is caucusing. And you know what, folks? If I was a betting man, I would be betting on Donald Trump right now. If you check out the exit polling going on from Reuters, actually, they didn't do exit polling. They did a 5-day rolling poll. You got to check it out. Reuters has it up on their site. All signs point to another Donald Trump victory, and we're talking big, folks. Reuters, in the 5-day rolling poll they have going on right now, has Trump up 41%. Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, at 18.5%. Marco Rubio at close to 13%. Ben Carson breaking double digits at 10%. And John Kasich bringing up the rear at 7%. Let's call it 8%. Let's be generous. We're going to be nice to John Kasich. John Kasich has been under a lot of pressure lately. I feel like we need to be nice to him. A lot of people telling him that he needs to pull a Jeb Bush and get out of the race. And he seems to be getting slammed from all sides. Establishment type's going to slam him for staying in the race, for hurting the chances of the last great establishment hope, Marco Rubio. And we'll get to that label in a second if that's fair or not. And also, he's getting pressured from conservatives and Trump supporters and Tea Partiers and whoever you might want to call them out there. You know, let's just call it the collective conservative movement right now, because there's a lot of fractures in it. Being told that, you know what, step aside, you're not the guy, you know you're not the guy, and that's all there is to it. The Nevada caucus, as we're doing the show, is underway. Hopefully we'll be able to get you some results by the end of the show. But let's look at some of this exit polling. I found this to be pretty interesting. Yes, I'm a nerd, okay? Thanks for pointing that out. I find polling interesting. Here's the thing. Donald Trump is leading over the field in so many categories, except for maybe one. Here's the thing. Yes, Trump is going to cruise to victory tonight, no pun intended. But is it a real victory for the Republican Party? In certain aspects, yes. In certain aspects, no. When we talk about people who are very conservative, see, Reuters broke it down for us. When we talk about people who are very conservative, Donald Trump is not winning those voters. People who identify as very conservative are picking Senator Ted Cruz 8 points over Donald Trump, both of them breaking 30%. Significant because you have a clear fracture in the quote-unquote very conservative voting bloc. Not good news for Ted Cruz. A divided House cannot stand on its own, right? So we are looking at a split almost down the middle of the conservative movement. Those people who consider themselves moderately conservative. Rhino! Excuse me. Oh, did I say that? Those who consider themselves moderately conservative are going for Trump in a big, big way. 48%, breaking the vote total he has for cumulative voters. Marco Rubio in second with 13, so he's doing just about the same as he was across the board. and Ted Cruz underperforming with those who consider themselves moderately conservative with 12%. That's very telling. To me, yes, it's one state, and yes, we shouldn't use one state to be the barometer for the nation. But this is the latest polling, and I think what we can see is that Ted Cruz may have a problem with those people who consider themselves moderates. And a lot of times, folks, moderates also consider themselves to be independents. Yes, you can have an independent with conservative leaning. Yes, you can have an independent with liberal leaning. But you don't really hear about independents being so passionate one way or the other that you can think that they will fall in that other category of either conservative or liberal every single time. They seem to blow with the wind. They stay right in the middle. Moderates. Ted Cruz seems to have a problem with moderates in Nevada because he's underperforming with them. This is where it gets a little weird. Because when you look at people who self-identify as Tea Party voters, you would think they would go with what a very conservative self-identifying voter would say and go with Ted Cruz leading. Not the case here. Tea Party voters go for Trump 36%, 6% more than the very conservative voter, but Ted Cruz drops to 17, more than half, with self-identifying Tea Party voters. I can't figure that one out, folks. Usually the two kind of run together. You're very conservative and you're a Tea Party voter. This could be a sign, as we've said when we looked at the results in Iowa, as we said when we looked at the results in New Hampshire, that the Tea Party is becoming a broader base of voters. People that may not consider themselves to be conservative in the traditional sense. And they're going for Donald Trump. By the way, number 3 you would think would be Marco Rubio among Tea Party favorites, but he's dropped to number 4 behind Ben Carson. Yes, I said Ben Carson is actually beating Marco Rubio in a category in these Reuters polls in Nevada. Very interesting. Again, the Tea Party seems to have a soft spot for Dr. Ben Carson. They seem to like what he's about. Again, people, if you are out there and you support Dr. Ben Carson, can you raise your hands for me, please? I'd like to try to identify this group and see exactly where you fall within the traditional lines of conservative, moderate, liberal, whatever, demographic-wise, income-wise, social view-wise. Let us know who you are. Stand up and be heard. Raise your hand. We need to figure out this phenomenon, really. So, it's kind of a weird dynamic between Tea Party and conservatives. Maybe the definitions are not what we think they are, at least for this election. When you look at education levels in these 5-day rolling polls from Reuters in the great state of Nevada, if you had less than a high school education, Trump was your guy, 34%. The more education you had, Trump still led, but led by less. If you're a college-educated voter, Trump 24, Rubio 18, Cruz 16. If you have education beyond college, like myself and my friend Matt Fairley, who's going to be joining us for our interview later with Shaun McCutcheon, 22% Trump, 18 Rubio, 17 Cruz. Tightly packed, tightly split amongst highly educated voters. Again, this is where it gets interesting. If you have less than a high school education, yes, Trump is winning. But guess who's in second? The couch. That's right, folks. This is the entity, this is the candidate, quote unquote, that nobody wants to talk about. People said that if they're not voting for Trump, they're staying home, more so than supporting any other candidate. They won't go out and vote. 28% of people who say they have less than a high school education chose not to vote at all. That's telling. And that's not the only group where this happened in this poll. Minorities. And by minorities, we mean black voters and Hispanic voters, and I guess other races put together. Minorities go for Trump 30%, but the couch gets 23%. Again, very telling to me that the couch is going to beat the Republican field except for Donald Trump. But now what happens? This screws the Republican Party. Because if people are going to be staying home and you're competing against Democrats who may be motivated to stop a Donald Trump, what happens is you lose that state. You may lose that election because the couch will win out. When the couch wins, people get into office that shouldn't be in office. And it's your own fault, really, because your party wasn't motivated to come out and vote. This could be a phenomenon we should watch as Donald Trump racks up more and more wins. And you know what, folks? When we talk about what's going to be happening in Nevada this week, let's be clear. This is not a huge election. It's not huge, Trump supporters. Does it build momentum? Yeah. Absolutely, it builds momentum. And you're going to need momentum heading into Super Tuesday, which is just around the corner. Is this an indicator of who should leave and who should stay? I mean, common knowledge amongst politicos these days is that it's a three-person race right now. It's Trump, Cruz, and Rubio, and let the chips fall where they may. But there may be some things coming up, like Ohio, that could give a good indication of who the second choice should be. If John Kasich has a great turnout in his home state, and he's able to deliver Ohio, think about how much more attractive he becomes to the eventual winner of the presidential sweepstakes on the Republican side. Any minor candidate that delivers a state should be able to boost that candidate in that state. And Ohio is going to be one of those states that may be in play for the general election. I think that John Kasich is going to stay in the race beyond Nevada, though he's getting the call to step down and not run and clear the way, old man, and all that nonsense. And I think you're going to see John Kasich hang in there just to see what happens in Ohio. Ben Carson is another story. I think it's time for Dr. Carson to end the book tour and to move on to the next project. I think it's that time. Ben Carson doesn't really serve any further purpose other than to pull conservative voters away from Rubio and Cruz. And honestly, Rubio and Cruz are so close together right now. Ben Carson could be a kingmaker amongst conservative voters. He could tip the scale between that whole Cruz-Rubio battle right now. This might be the best time for Ben Carson to get out of a race. He might be playing a little bit of a kingmaker going forward. It's something to discuss. And speaking of discussing political events and caucuses and presidential elections and all that stuff, while we're doing a live show here right now, we got a chat room going at www.behindenemylinesradio.us. Click on the Listen Live button. You'll be taken to a beautiful world of conservative thought and a little bit of sarcasm and some ribbing with a bunch of our good friends and fans in the chat room. And you're welcome to participate with us as the show goes live. Checking in the chat room, we're seeing some comments. One of our listeners' takes from this whole thing is that Kasich has no chance, and that the takeaway from the polling is that idiots like Trump. And it explains the support of Russ Scalo. Wow! I'm going to tell him you said that when he comes back. Russ is, of course, working tonight. Shout out to Russ and the great article he wrote, which we'll be talking about later in the show. And you know what? We want to just give a shout out to our fan Dano, who was in a little bit of a weather situation in his house, and we're glad that he's okay, even though things got crazy for a little while. Glad you're doing well, pal. Welcome into the chat. Folks, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Matt Fairley and I will give you our interview with Shaun McCutcheon of the famed Supreme Court decision of McCutcheon versus FEC that really made liberal heads explode. And he's going to talk to you about why we don't need less campaign money in politics. We need more campaign money in politics. We'll be discussing that with him and after the interview as well. So